107.5 WBLS, your number one source for R&B.
September 7th, he'll be on WLNY, Channel 10 and Channel 55. You can watch him every day at 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock. But here he is going to answer a couple of questions. So I have a lot of questions, Judge.
Well, come on with it. If they're legal, I can handle it.
Yes, and I know you can. I want to first start talking about the Sandra Bland case, arrested after a routine traffic stop for not signaling. And my first question is, should a traffic stop escalate to an arrest?
Well,
go ahead.
First of all, in that case, she said she was pulling, or the evidence, and we heard her say she was pulling over to allow the police to go by her.
Right. She didn't think it was for her.
Yeah. And secondly, she's allowed to smoke a cigarette.
Yeah.
And he very commanding required her to put her cigarette out.
Right.
Then required her to get out of the car. Well, that is the law if the police request that you get out of the car. However, it is public policy and the color of the law, if you will, that it's only done when you have a reasonable threat.
Right, that's
to
what
your
I
safety.
thought. Exactly, because he wasn't threatened because he walked away from the car to go write the ticket and came back with the ticket.
And the threat, he certainly didn't feel threatened enough to pull out a taser and curse her and threaten to
light her up.
And then snatch her, and from what I understand, and I think what we may have heard, is he slammed her on the ground.
Yeah.
Pushed her head on the ground, and she began to tell him how she had epilepsy.
Right.
As did Eric Garner when he was telling the police that he couldn't breathe.
Right.
Similar situation. So whatever may have happened in that cell, nothing would have occurred like that. She would still be alive were it not for, in my opinion, the illegal search and seizure and what I believe perhaps was an assault by a police officer.
First.
In the law we say but for almost equals causation. In other words, did he cause the crime? Well, whether he caused her death or not, but for his actions, she would still be alive. So that's my opinion on that, and that's the way I look at it, and I hope the prosecutor looks at it in that manner when they looking to investigate the officer's stop.
Now, 3 days later, she was found dead in her cell. She allegedly told 2 intake officers that she attempted suicide last year. Shouldn't she have been put on suicide watch, or no? It's just because she says that in intake process?
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that issue up. They are required to put them on suicide watch, and in some instances, place them in the hospital ward, the jail hospital ward, if you will. There's a certain section of most jails, county jails in particular, that house those with mental illness and other illnesses. And so she should have perhaps been placed there, but certainly on suicide watch. So they were negligent in their care for her in that instance as well.
And, you know, seeing the cell and how big that garbage can was, I'm saying to myself, why must they have a garbage can that big in a cell when they take all their belongings so they don't have anything to throw away? How much do they have to throw away that they need a trash can of that size?
And the bag in the trash can. I mean, if you take the belt from a person because you know you can use that for hanging yourself, but you take all the other items within their reach so that they can avoid hanging themselves or killing someone else who was in the cell with them. Why wouldn't you take the bag? If she had sense enough, which we don't know was the case, but if they think she had sense enough to use that bag, if that's their belief, which we're not sure, then why wouldn't they then know that that bag shouldn't be in there? There's another act of negligence, quite frankly. So we really see a lot of negligence by this police force.
Oh, definitely. Because if you look at the cell too, and I mentioned this to Bob Slade this morning, if you really look around, you'll see that there is a rope that the shower curtain is hanging from. So that's another, I think, considering they're saying that she said in the intake process that she had tried to commit suicide last year, there's a big rope right there with the shower curtain hanging from it.
Yep. A lot of negligence.
Yeah. So now that they've done the county autopsy, in any way, can that hinder the independent autopsy?
Oh, no, not at all. No, not at all. The independent autopsy is just as it is just as it's stated, independent. No, absolutely not.
Okay.
That's something that the family must pay for in most instances, though.
Right.
The county won't pay for, or the jail system won't pay for an independent autopsy.
Okay.
Unless there's a questionable issue that the judge may order a independent autopsy for, and that's up to the legal system there. And we've seen that it failed her in that instance, and we've seen in that part of the country. Or I don't want to.
I'll go ahead and do it.
I don't want to pass judgment on that part of Texas, but we've seen a lot going down in that part of Texas of injustice against African Americans.
Just one thing on the police officer involved, the deputy sheriff or whatever he was. What punishment? Right now he's on suspension, but what punishment do you think would be fitting for this gentleman here? Because I mean, he was foul all the way through.
Well, the ultimate punishment, I think, would be assault. Him grabbing her and throwing her to the ground when he had no real threat to his safety.
Right.
And I think some of the evidence may be in what we heard her saying.
Right.
And
he also lied in his report, saying that she kicked him and scratched him, where there's no evidence of that. You didn't see that physically. You didn't see that when he took her out of the car or any of that stuff. He actually also told her to put down your cell phone on the car. And she did that per his orders.
And we have some civil claims there that aren't criminal, but false imprisonment when you detain anyone illegally. That's false imprisonment, and illegal search and seizure, I believe, occurred when he pulled her out of the car and threatened her and handcuffed her, and there was no reasonable suspicion that she committed a crime other than a traffic violation. She had no warrants on her, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and if it were left up to me, I'm probably up to you, Judge. I'd fire his ass. Pardon my language, but I would have to fire him. He would never be a police officer ever, anywhere, ever again.
Yep, and there's the civil claim, the ultimate civil claim, in which I hope that they win, and that would be the death, her death.
Right.
Yeah.